President Trump has pushed to revive the coal industry, but growth in solar power beat all other energy sources in 2016. And it might surprise you to learn that the center of the booming solar power industry is in red Trump territory. 8 of the 10 fastest growing U.S. solar markets between the second quarters of 2016 and 2017 were Western, Midwestern, or Southern states that voted for Trump, with Alabama and Mississippi topping the list. Brian Murray is the director of the Environmental Economics program at Duke University and joins me now from Durham, North Carolina, director of the Energy Initiative, also at Duke University. Thank you very much for joining us. So tell me, why is the solar energy seeing this growth in Trump country?
Well, mostly because that's really where the sun is, right? So the rural America is where you see large landscapes of available land with a lot of sun available. Those are the most productive sites to put solar capacity.
So in what specific sectors has the push to combat global change created more jobs?
Well, I think the push to address global climate change has meant that for the better part of a decade now, we have been looking at ways to reduce the carbon footprint of the energy that we produce. In the case of the electric power sector, that's meant a significant increase in the amount of solar energy and wind energy in the United States. Those two sectors alone within the electric power sector account for more than half of the employment, according to the Department of Energy's annual Energy Employment Report. Now, it's important to note that the reason that employment is so high is because these are build-outs. It takes a lot of labor to build a solar farm. And it takes a lot of labor to put up a wind turbine, but once they're up and running, they don't necessarily need as much labor as other forms of energy.
How much of an increase are we seeing in the numbers of these new jobs?
Well, just in solar alone last year, there was an increase in employment of 25% in 2016, and in wind about 33%. And together they account for about 500,000 jobs per year.
So how do you expect the current Trump administration to impact this over the next several years?
Well, one of the reasons that this has happened is because there's been a transition in the power sector away from coal towards natural gas and renewables. And as I think you pointed out in your introductory comments, the Trump administration has asked the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission to consider the possibility of essentially subsidizing coal as a source for its reliability reasons. And so if that's the case, then the transition from coal to renewables and gas might slow down some.
So where exactly would you say is climate change itself, such as warmer temperatures, rising sea level, where exactly is this creating the jobs?
Well, in the case of that, dimension of the problem of climate change, you could think about this. If there are going to be more frequent storms, like those that we saw in Texas and Florida and Puerto Rico recently, then, the employment there is going to be reconstruction. If we're going to see more frequent fires through climate change, as some project, then we might see more people fighting fires in places like California and Montana. And if we see that climate change has a negative impact on agricultural productivity where it now occurs, then what we might see is more employment in areas such as constructing irrigation. We might see a migration of employment northward to what would become more hospitable climes for agriculture than right now. And we also might see more employment in research labs to develop climate change resilient seed technologies, for instance.
Brian Murray, director of the Energy Institute at Duke University. Brian, thank you so much for joining us on this.
Thank you for having me.